morning, everyone. So I'm the founder of the Connecticut Parents Union, but I also have the great pleasure of being the director of Teach Our Children Youth Unleashed from New Haven. New Haven is the third largest urban district within the state of Connecticut. Hartford is the second poorest district in the country. So when we're talking about an education crisis, we have an education crisis. There's unrest across the country, talking about oppression, talking about equity, equality. So we joined forces with the Hartford Parent University, Teach Our Children of New Haven, Connecticut Parent Union, and other education advocates to ensure that every child has access to a great school. The problem is we always say that. Year after year, we say we put kids first, but then when we look at academic success and outcomes in urban communities and majority urban communities, we see that our children aren't able to compete locally, let alone globally. So we join forces to make Equity for All project. And what this does is to ensure that we have a fair system. Life is not fair, but we have an obligation to make the system as fair as possible. So we joined forces as parents from across the state and came up with equity priorities. In other words, what are fair priorities? Number one, we're talking about equity impact assessment laws. And what that does is, before laws are passed, they must be assessed for fairness. Right now, Connecticut does have a racial impact assessment law that just applies to the judicial. Before they look at sentencing, before they look at other elements in the judicial committee, they apply this law. But it should apply to all areas, especially education, with the school to prison pipeline. So if you're going to look at the sentencing policies, then we need to look at the educational policies to ensure that they are not oppressing, that they are not denying people and our young people an equitable access to a great education. We introduced this law in 2009 under our former Representative Kenneth Green. We were able to get the law passed in 2009. We talked about it in 2012, and we spoke to Senator Gary Winfield, who said, Senator Winfield, that will now introduce this bill to the legislative body. So we also have Glenn Cassis here from the African American Affairs Commission, who I have been speaking with about the Equity Impact Assessment Law bill to try to introduce it and get some traction. The second bill we have is Parent Empowerment Law. In 2010, we introduced a Parent Empowerment Law under a School Reform Act that was led by the Black and Puerto Rican Caucus. And as a result, we were able to get school governance councils, which is a law that says in the lowest performing schools within the state of Connecticut, you have to have school governance councils that are composed of parents, teachers, community leaders, and if it's a high school, then students. The problem is, it has been a non-enforced law. And Hartford had an interesting case where Clark School tried to implement the Parent Empowerment Law and got pushed back from our unions. So this is not about being anti-union, this is about being pro-child, so let us be clear. So as a result, we're asking lawmakers to introduce a petition process for parents, so that when politics gets in the way of children, parents, the majority of parents in a school, can make the decision as a body. So it's not no longer 14 school governance council members, but it's 51% of a school. So a school, for example, a school of 500, if 251 parents sign a petition, it begins a reform process. And so whatever that community decides, whether it's charter, whether it's magnet, sometimes you just need to fix the library, right? Everything doesn't need to be shut down, closed down, start over. It's just about ensuring that all schools are great, not just Reading, not just Avon, not just more of our affluent neighborhoods. And then the last piece, we're looking at equity scholarships. So again, we're saying equity means fair. So we're looking at scholarships that for kids who are trapped in the lowest performing school. Since we're messaging state, people don't like to say failing. But we have some failing schools, we have some underperforming schools, and we have some great schools. So for the children that are trapped in the lowest performing, they should at a minimum have scholarships where their per pupil money is attached to the child, and that child should be able to go where he or she needs to go to ensure they're getting a great education. We can no longer negotiate children's rights. We cannot negotiate parents' rights anymore. Our kids have a constitutional right to a sound education, and parents have a constitutional right to ensure our children have a great education. So that is why we're here today.